Hi, this is Mike. Today I'm going to show you how to install a HyLoft Storage Solutions Ceiling Storage Unit. It's 45 inches by 45 inches in the garage. Now I've got one already installed, as you can see, and I'm going to go through the steps on how to install another one right next to it. I'll go over the tools required for the job, along with some tools that will be helpful. You have a selection of wrenches, 5/16, 7/16 and a half, and then you've got the sockets for your drill. There's a drill with a socket attachment on it with an extension, and then a drill with a drill bit, which is a 3/16. You don't necessarily need two drills, but if you have two drills, it really makes things easier. You could actually do the whole job, if you had to, with a crescent wrench and one drill. But all these other tools make things so much easier. You'll need something to open your packaging. Two items I would use for this would be a knife and a wire cutter. The wire cutter is to cut off the zip ties that they have on different items inside the packaging. You need some kind of a marking tool. Sometimes I like to use a Sharpie. Sometimes I like to use a pencil. Sometimes you need a short pencil to get into tight spaces. Either some kind of tape measure or straight ruler of some sort. Gloves are always helpful on any kind of construction job. Safety glasses. Stud finder. Stud finder is not really necessary. You can use your knuckles, which work really well as a stud finder. And beeswax, because you get a lot of friction going and you can actually break screws and bolts if you don't have some sort of friction reducer. And then some sort of a tray to hold your tools, to keep everything together, all your tools and all your nuts and bolts. It's really helpful if you have some sort of a tray. It doesn't matter what it is. It can be a box, can be a pie pan. And you will need a ladder. I've already opened the box. Now let's go through all the contents. First of all, you have the manual. One thing in the manual that's nice is they say if you have a missing part, you give them a call and they'll send you the part. 1, 2, 3 metal racks. And here's the reason why I have the wire cutters. You have all these items that are tied together, so you have to loosen those. If you use a knife, you run the risk of scratching the items. With a wire cutter, you can get right in there and cut where you need to. So you have 2 bracket assemblies. You have the nuts and bolts package. I'll set those aside for now. One thing that I noticed when I was setting up the other units was that this bracket is facing the wrong direction. If you look at the pictures, you'll see that the bracket actually faces the other direction. If you try to install it in the direction like this, it's not going to go up properly and you're going to have to redo it. This is the shelf where the shelf pieces sit. The bracket has to face the same direction as the shelf pieces. So before you get started, if your package comes like this, make sure that you take off the brackets and reverse them the other way. And that way, everything will go together properly. It should face that way. You can see at the top, the bracket goes on the inside. If it were mounted on the outside, you have to change your measurement to the spacing of the holes. So you could do that. Also, if you're doing side by side, you need the bracket to be on the inside so that you have room for the units to be next to each other. All right, I'm placing the next bracket, getting ready to make the pilot hole. There's no need to disassemble these pieces. You can take the whole piece, put it up against the ceiling so you can mark it. You'll notice since I'm doing 2 side by side, this is the first one that I put in, and I've already tightened all those connections. What you're going to want to do on this second one since there's not a whole lot of room to work there, is to tighten that top piece on before you bolt it on. So once you place it, mark the hole, and that's where we're going to drill our pilot hole. Okay, here's a helpful hint. Now pretend like I'm putting up the first one, and I need to figure out where the proper placement of the holes is. An easy way to do it is once you determine where your first hole is going to be located, take a screw, put the screw where you mark the hole. You don't have to put it in very far. I've put a straight edge ruler up against the screw that I put in the position where the first hole goes. And I'm going to go down here and mark 44 1/4, which is the exact spot that they want you to place the hole. And that's an easy way to hold your ruler in the exact position so that you can mark your next hole. I'm going to take out my pilot screw. I've got a 3/16 on my drill. Make sure you always wear eye protection, wear gloves too. So we're going to drill a hole for the bolt. Now normally you may not have this kind of blocking. The reason I did the blocking is because the position that I wanted to place the racks did not match up with the studs. The blocking is screwed into the framing of the garage, and you can see I'm 200 pounds hanging on it, and it's very strong. Here's a little secret. Beeswax you can get at Home Depot or Lowe's. It really cuts down the friction, makes the bolts go in super easy. Just get your bolt, put a little bit on the tip like so. Doesn't take a lot. Now when you go to put the bolt in, it's going to go in super easy, lowers the friction, lowers the heat, lowers the chance of breaking the bolt, which you actually can't break these bolts if you drive them in too hard. Got the bolt into my 1/2-inch driver, and I've double checked to make sure that everything's hanging in the right direction. Put it into my pilot hole, get it started. Now when you're using a driver, you don't want to go too fast because again, that's going to give you a lot of friction and the possibility of breaking the bolt, so just take it slowly. And for now, don't tighten it up completely. We'll make sure everything's installed properly before we do the final tightening. The next step is I have verified that I've got the brackets installed properly. The spacing is just right, just where I want it. Now we need to put on the grids. You'll notice that on one end of the grid, there's 2 bars. On this end, there's 1 bar. There are 2 grids that are built like this. The third grid is like this. Just has a single bar on each side. This grid goes in the center. So you'll be installing the outside grids first and then the center last. Before you go up on the ladder, make sure that the bolt fits through the grid. It needs to go through the last square in the corner, just like so. I found on some of them they were a little tight. So you don't want to go up on the ladder and then find out that it won't fit. So it fits in both of these. So now we're going to go up on the ladder. You place this over the holes. There's holes in the mounting brackets. The bolt goes from the top through the hole, and then this nut goes on the bottom. And then we'll repeat the process for the other side of this shelf and for the other shelf on the other end of the unit. The final piece goes in the center. attaches to the pieces that are already there with these little nuts and bolts. And then after that, you want to go up and make sure all these connections are tight. I've already tightened the connection at the top there because you have to reach it through here before you put the last piece in. And you should be ready to go. We'll be waiting for you to come over and help us put things away.